Long ago, we had all kinds of logos in Farm Bureau that represented various things, and the insurance company had one and we had one. I'm very proud and very honored to say that now we have that star, which can be used in many ways. The Farm Bureau, the same people that walk the halls in Austin and Washington working for the interests and the property rights of the farm and ranch families of this state, are the same people that protect your financial interests, that ensure the future of these young people that we talked about tonight. It's my honor to be part of that and to be a part of your annual meeting tonight. If you read my blog, we posted a new one under my byline today that is called, the title of it, "When we say grassroots, we mean it." And we do mean it, because we have a system, our policy development system, that ensures that we take the interests of farm and ranch families to heart. And that's what we mean, that's what we talk about. When I sat down to think about what I visit with you folks about tonight, it occurred to me we've been involved in a few things this year that, Russell, in so many ways are so unique, but they point out why we have a Farm Bureau, why we take the trouble to recognize longest tenured members and ensure our future by making sure our young people understand something about the free enterprise system. Historically speaking, just very quickly, more than 100 years ago in a place called Broome County, New York, the Chamber of Commerce established a bureau, a farm bureau, as part of their chamber that was partly funded by the USDA, partly funded by the chamber, and partly funded by railroads. And they would use that bureau to extend out into the county farm bureau, into the counties, the members' agricultural techniques, agricultural information, and so on. Then in 1919, the American Farm Bureau Federation was born, so that we could extend that across the country. And then in 1933, after an early failure, the Texas Farm Bureau was formed as the Texas Agricultural Association. And before very long, we'd be calling it Farm Bureau again. But this time, they got it right. Instead of being financed in some other way, it was financed with membership dues, so that not only would we have to be adequately financed, everyone had some skin in the game. And more important than that, everyone had a voice. Everyone was part of making up this thing that we called the voice of Texas agriculture. There were a whole bunch of challenges back then. I mean, we have challenges now. Great challenges. There was a Great Depression. Farmers were as poor as everyone else. They couldn't get insurance coverage, so we formed service companies to save farmers and ranchers money. And maybe the worst problem of all was the isolation. That's not so much a problem today. Didn't have electricity, didn't have communication, but we had a Farm Bureau. Have you ever noticed that there is no lack of people that would speak for farmers? Politicians, corporations, others, happy to speak with farmers, but for farmers. But by forming the Texas Farm Bureau and the American Farm Bureau Federation, they said, thanks but no thanks, we will speak for ourselves. Property rights is the issue in Farm Bureau that I think trumps all the others. It's the reason we are. It is what we are. This year, along the Red River border between Texas and Oklahoma, we had a very unique situation. The roots of it go back some 30 years, when a Farm Bureau member of the name of Tommy Henderson lost some 140 acres of his property to a strange and wrong, in our view, court case, United States Supreme Court decision, where the Bureau of Land Management, because that border shifts and changes, claimed that land, and he lost it. Now, some 30 years later, they're out surveying again, and we learn that perhaps as many as 90,000 acres owned by people like you, with titles and deeds and 100 years worth of tax receipts, suddenly we're told they didn't own that property and in fact had never owned it. They reduced eventually the number to 30,000. But needless to say, folks got quite excited about this. This is the history, the legacy of these farm and ranch families, of the Farm Bureau itself, and so on. We were asked in the Public Relations Division to do a video. We went up and we recorded some people and got them on the record. We put that on YouTube. We put it on the Facebook page and so on. The next day I was in Austin and I got a phone call with the information that our video on that BLM situation was going viral. And some 3 million hits later, we knew that we were in for a real fight. At the same time, out in Nevada, a fellow named Bundy, you may remember this, he was and is, I believe, wrong in his claim, but he no longer wanted to pay his federal grazing fees. But because of that situation, people were looking at ours. Because the BLM was involved in that one, they were also looking at ours. But the BLM backed down in our case. They came to the table. They are negotiating with us. We think we will have a resolution, and by a process known as color of title, now some 30 years later, we believe that it is very likely that Tommy Henderson will get his property back. And that is an amazing victory for Farm Bureau and for property rights all over the country. Now, in this process, we met some people that were really, literally ready to fight. I met a guy that called himself a brigadier general in the Texas militia. He was ready to bring armed people to the Red River. And the cool thing, the neat thing to me, is that we used the tools of our great democracy. We went to Washington, D.C., and we met with people, and now we actually have a chance to win on this. We have a similar situation going on right now with the Environmental Protection Agency. You've heard it called WOTUS, perhaps, Waters of the United States, relating back to the Clean Water Act. Some people think with new regulations like this, it might not be possible to farm and be in compliance with the multitude of regulations and the possibilities that might happen. When the EPA says you're in violation, they are serious. It means a 5-figure-a-day fine. Well, when they first created the Clean Water Act, it applied to the navigable waters of the United States. What does navigable mean? To me, it means you can put a boat in it. But now navigable, they want that to mean the mud hole in front of your barn. A ditch that right now probably hasn't had water in it in how long? Those are the navigable waters of the United States. Back when I was in the age of these young people you heard from tonight, we had some really, really serious pollution problems in this country. Just absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, we were point source pollution with factories discharging into streams, with sewage problems and all of that. EPA was created to fight those battles, and often they did. You know what? They won. And no one bothered to tell them, I suppose, because they don't realize that they won. Because they're still fighting those battles and still trying to apply that same kind of stringent regulation where there is not a problem. There are simply not those kinds of water pollution problems in rural Texas today. The EPA needs to understand it. Congress said no when they tried to apply this rule some years ago. When they filed suit, the Supreme Court of the United States said no. What does that mean? To me, it means no. But to the EPA, it says, let's do it anyway. Just by regulation and regulatory fiat, we will put this rule out there. Farm Bureau has been active. On our website, texasfarmbureau.org, please go. Look at legislative, look at voter voice. That will give you the opportunity to file a comment. The comment period has been extended to November 14th, and if you haven't done it yet, please do it. File the comment. We eventually are going to win this battle. We're going to ditch the rule. This Clean Water Act is a bad rule, and we may need to say no. It's not always about government either. Ask anyone who's dealt with a pipeline company on eminent domain. Sometimes they say, we're just taking it because we can. The problem is, and the point is, that when these kinds of things happen, you are not alone. Just like back in 1933, as some of these longest tenured members can probably attest, as we've been through the years. Back in 1933, farmers and ranchers were alone. And that's why the Texas Farm Bureau was created. Going back to the BLM issue, a young man named Ken Adderholt, whose house actually stands in this area claimed by the Bureau of Land Management. This is not an eminent domain case for him. They're just going to take it. They say they own it already until we negotiated a deal where he can get color of title. Ken said, no one listened to me. Even my own congressman would not listen to me until Farm Bureau came to my aid. Now they are listening. And we went to Washington and we were heard. Voter voice is one of those tools. Please, we need more comments. Please go to our Texas Farm Bureau website. Let me close by telling you about Uncle Elmer's two aunts who lived back in East Texas. They happened to be very afraid of men. That was their problem. They were phobic about men to the extent that the female tabby cat that they owned, they would not let her out because they were afraid that she would run into some gentleman cats. So, as it turned out, one of the two aunts had to go to Houston on some business, but she was afraid to go because it was kind of obvious that she would eventually be running into some men. But she promised to write every day, and she did. And the first letter said, you would not believe how many men are here. Some are very brazen. They're talking to me. The next letter that came said, some of these men have even asked me out, but don't worry, I'm not going. The third letter said, well, I might go. Don't worry, I will behave myself. So the letter came the next day that said she was going to go out on a date. And then no letter for the next day and the day after that for 4 days. Finally, on the fifth day, a new letter arrived and it said, let the cat out. My point is, we don't need to be afraid of what we don't understand. We have many tools today. We have voter voice. We can get the word to our legislators, to our members of Congress. We don't need to be afraid of what we don't understand. We have the social media. We have relationships with the news media. We have a Farm Bureau staff. We don't need to be afraid. It may be time to let the cat out and be aggressive in telling our story. I appreciate very much being asked to be here tonight. Good night, and thanks for listening.